What is going on, my beautiful people? Welcome to yet again another episode of the Pivot Mindset Podcast. My name is Justin. I am your host, and man, I'm super excited to have you joining with me on yet again another episode. Y'all, can y'all believe that? Man, we're nearing a new year. We're finishing up a year. We're getting started on a new year, and man, this year has just flown by. And man, there's just so many things that I've got to be celebratory about, and I'm sure you do too. And so, man, I just wanted to give you a shout out, for people who have listened to this podcast all year. Man, we started this podcast at the end of last year, and now we're up to where we are right now. And I just want to give this shout out to everybody who has rocked with us up until this point. Man, podcasting is probably one of the funnest things that I've got the chance to do and ever started. And we just getting started here. So if you're clicking and connecting to this podcast for the very first time, we believe that life is all about the pivots, and those who decide to make the pivots decide to become successful. And that success is a deliberate decision that we all make each and every day, and really to connect and go towards our purpose. And so, man, I want to just welcome you to another episode. So, I got somebody special. Man, I'm really excited to jump into this topic, jump into this episode today because, man, this is a culmination. This person that I'm getting ready to introduce you to, I believe he was actually the first person that I've ever been on a podcast before. So he was kind of the first person that I knew, I think, that had a podcast, or I may have known people that had a podcast, but he was one of the first people that introduced me and actually allowed me to be on this platform. And he invited me back twice. So man, got the chance to really rock with him, and man, just a great dude, great all around guy. We're gonna dive into the story and all that kind of stuff in a little bit, but man, I want to connect you really to the topic of today, and we're going to be diving deep on what it is to live your purpose. So, man, without further ado, let me introduce you to Mr. Live Your Purpose himself, John Morgan, my brother. What is up, man? Glad to have you on the pod. How you feeling?
Man. But it feels good to be here, man. I thank you for the invite. I really am just ecstatic to be here with you, man. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely, man. Like I said, the pleasure is really all mine, man. Like I said, you are somebody, man, who you like just naturally, like I don't know, we've known each other for a couple years, but you're a guy, man, that no matter how long, I feel like people or other people probably feel like this, but no matter how long you've known John, you feel like you probably known the dude all his life, because just a really genuine guy, really stand up person, really cares about people. And man, I'm just glad to have you on this platform and really to dive deep into this whole living your purpose. And I connected you. A lot of people to connect you to purpose, man. Like it's something significant for your name to become synonymous amongst a friends group around the purpose guy, right? So, man, introduce yourself to the people. Let them know where you're from, who you are, man. Just a little bit about your background before we dive in.
Yeah, so yeah, man. So John Morgan, born and raised from Akron, Ohio. I am a proud Akronite. I was proud to be here. Pre LeBron and post Bron. You know what I'm saying? So it feels good to to be from a small city that the world has known synonymous with greatness. You know what I'm saying? So
Absolutely.
born and raised here. I currently own a media company called Live Your Purpose Media, where we host a podcast, Live Your Purpose Podcast, where Justin spoke about being a guest there. And the intention and the goal of Live Your Purpose is to have authentic conversations about people's story and how they're currently living their purpose. And throughout that work, I've also transitioned becoming a coach as well, and helping people being able to find their purpose. What is it that you are really destined here to be? What is that burning desire that you have, that that it's inside of you, and you're just not really sure how to take those steps to actually work in that plan for you. And so I help people build that out, and figure that out for themselves, and ultimately try to help them flourish as much as possible. I'm a husband, a happily married husband. A father of two, who literally give me different gray hairs every day. I got a 2 year old and an 8 month year old. You know what I'm saying? So I
Absolutely.
am in the thick of like a lot of motion and a lot of just like constant evolution with my children. But they are a constant reminder and a confirmation to me of just like what joy looks like, you know.
Mm,
So for me, man, you know, the accolades, the business, you know, all of that stuff, it's great. Don't get me wrong, but my children and my unit that I have, you know, within my family dynamic, man, is by far my most prized possession. And, you know, that's the thing that continuously fuels me and, you know, living out purpose.
yeah, man, I love it. Absolutely beautiful. Like, talk to us a little bit about your story. So,
Mm.
obviously born and raised Akron, Ohio. Like, kind of give us some background to understand. Like, we understand who you are now, and you're the purpose guy, and you got a media company, and you're killing it in so many facets and aspects of life. But what was kind of like the upbringing? Like, in what environment were you raised to kind of produce the person you are today?
Yeah, so it's a long story, but truthfully, man, like I honestly, I always known that I was special, right? Like I always knew that I had certain gifts that people enjoyed being around me. You know, no matter what room I was in, no matter what group of people I was around, even if I like stood in the background and I just like and I didn't assert myself verbally and I was, you know, kind of just being a little shy and whatnot, people always found their way towards me, right?
Yeah.
And that transition, I found myself doing that in school, in sports, and family dynamics, and you know, in friend groups. Like I always knew that people gravitated towards me,
Mm,
and that I think that gave me like a certain level of like confidence, and it gave me a certain level of like um, status, you know, early on that people gravitated to me early on. But within that, even though people gravitated to me early on, there was still a lot of trials and tribulations that were happening around me within my family dynamics that I wasn't aware of. You know, my innocence was, you know, I was blind to a lot of it. You know, I had no idea that my father was struggling with substances and drugs the
mm,
majority of my life. You know, my mother and father were married, you know, when I was a child, and then they got divorced when I was 5, and next thing you know, I didn't see my dad for months at a time, and you know, those months maybe turned into 6 months, to 8 months, and you know, I may see him a couple times a year. You know, there were times where I wouldn't even hear from him and things like that. Um, so that was like my earliest memory of just like, okay, even though I have a lot of joy and like, you know, people are gravitating for me and I actually have like this vibrancy of life, like I enjoyed life at a young age.
yeah.
That was like my first taste of like the realities of what life really can be and things really being out of my control. You
Yeah.
know, and my father was like, he was one of those dudes that it really wasn't any beef between him and I. You know, he just wasn't there. And I started to see the toll of that and how that impacted me, how that began to impact my mother, you know.
Mm,
Um, and from there, you know, my mother got remarried when I was about 10. And my mother stayed married for close to about 20 years before she passed away a few years ago.
mm.
And I didn't know at the time when she was married as a youngster, but my mother was in a domestic abusive relationship
Wow.
for years.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? So here I am with like the two people who have given me life and like these huge, impactful stressors are impacting me subconsciously, consciously, directly, indirectly.
Yeah.
And I'm really not really being able to process and understand just how impactful those things were. But I soon began to learn that they did have an impact on me and they did have an impact on my spiritual, mental, and emotional health, you know. So
100%.
I played sports and a lot of things coming up and stuff like that. But when the sports journey was over in high school and my identity was attached to so much of that sports stuff,
Yeah.
I became lost, you know, and fell into some depressions and some deep cycles of just like trying to figure it out, man, and really not knowing who I was. You know,
Yeah.
that gift that I was so sure of, it had faded away what seemed like to be overnight, you know, and I attributed a lot of that to not having the proper outlets and the spaces to be able to kind of like process some of the stuff that I was dealing with, you know, just
It's
being
powerful.
um, a young black man growing up in America. So um, that's kind of like the sped up version and the intro of
100%. Yeah.
who I am and why I am today.
Yeah, man. So what about how did you get to this whole purpose thing? So you could have called and wrapped your brand around any topic, right? But like how did
Hmm.
you land on purpose? Like, talk to us about this development and kind of how this whole Live Your Purpose brand and all that you're doing. Like, tell us about how this all came about and what got you to this point.
Man, if you listen to me on my podcast or you just have conversations with me, man, I say the words divine order 100 times a day. You know what I'm saying? I'm a big believer in things being in divine order and big believer in God and the Creator just making sure things line up for you and not necessarily always to you. So how it specifically came to be about purpose was, man, I was walking on Cleveland State's campus maybe about 5 years ago, finishing up my last my last semester of college, and I was excited because I had been through the like ropes of college, like ups and downs for years, and I knew that I was very close to the finish line to getting my degree. So I'm like, man, you know what? I'm feeling good, but at this point, you're starting to kind of like put some things together, like what you're going to do with your life after the fact. And I knew that I was going to be able to get a job. I knew I was going to be able to work and do something working with people and something that I was going to be able to enjoy, right? But I couldn't escape the feeling of knowing that I was going to be good at what I did. I was going to enjoy what I did, but it really wasn't going to be fulfilling. It
Wow.
wasn't going to make me feel full,
Yeah.
right? Being a social worker, which I could find a lot of love there. I could find a lot of substance in what I was doing, but it really wasn't fueling and moving me,
Yeah.
right? So I was walking on this campus, and I remember like it was yesterday, man. It was mid February. Of 2018, I believe it was, so almost 5 years ago. And I was listening to Nipsey Hussle's album, and the first song of the album is called Victory Lap. And Nipsey says the line, he says, "Find your purpose or you wasting air."
Mm.
And I remember hearing that like, damn, like
Yeah.
what? Like let me go back. And he said it again, find your purpose or you wasting air.
Yeah.
And that line in itself was so profound and it resonated with my spirit so much that like, bro, I just could not stop getting that phrase, find your purpose or you wasting air. Find your purpose or you wasting air. And it just kind of like stayed within me. And I was a big believer that like, man, there's a reason why this line and this bar is standing out so significantly
The
to me.
divine
And
order.
it just found me. Yeah, the divine order,
Yeah.
man. So it just stayed within me. And then from there, like I remember talking to my wife about it, like, babe, I listen to podcasts all the time. Like I'm a podcast fanatic. I love it. I always wanted to do something kind of like in the media space. I think I'm gonna start a podcast and it's gonna be called Live Your Purpose. She was like, Live Your Purpose. I like that.
Yeah.
And then the
Wow.
rest of it is history,
Yeah.
man. And like I just been building on it. But truthfully, so the quick answer to your question is that like, man, purpose found me, and from
Mm.
there I just stayed true to that. And
Yeah.
I've been able to evolve it into, kind of what you're seeing today.
Wow. So for you, and I love that that like that moment where like everything just really started to click and come into alignment for you. Man, I was just talking to
Hmm.
a group of people about this yesterday, and I was telling them that a lot of people don't know that you can actually live life and enjoy your purpose during your working and your young and earning years.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of I think it is something that is often under talked about is a lot of people they try to push off purpose and desire and passion until later in life. It's like,
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna wait till I retire, or I'm gonna wait till the kids graduate, or I'm just gonna do what I gotta do to pay bills, make ends meet, and survive, be in survival mode until X date or until something happens or until something comes along, till I can then eventually get to purpose. I think a lot of people can even uh, create and connect purpose with retirement, right? It's like what a
Yeah,
lot
yeah,
of
yeah.
people are saying when they're like, man, I can't wait to retire. What they're really saying is, I can't wait to really do what I really desire to do, like what
Right,
really fires me up, like things that won't
right.
actually feel like work. And man, tell me, like, how do you define purpose? Like when we talk about purpose, right? And that's a pretty big word. I think it often has a lot of ambiguity behind it in today's day and age. But what is your definition of purpose? Like, how do you define purpose? And not just define it, but what does actually purpose feel like for you and your experience with it?
Right. So that's a fantastic question. So I look at purpose and I ask myself a few questions. Number one, is it true to you? Right. And so like we got to break down what true to you means, and I'm talking about when you are by yourself and you ask yourself certain questions, when you look yourself in the mirror, does it feel right to you? Not what the world tells you what you're supposed to be doing, not with your
Yeah.
friends, not with your family, not with your significant other, not this idea that people have told you something is true to you is, but is it true to you? Does your heart connect to it? Does your spirit connect to it? Does it resonate with you? You have to start with truth,
Mm.
right? You know what I'm saying? You are the easiest person to lie to. So like you have to like hold yourself to a level of honesty and integrity, when you're talking about living, purposeful. So truth is the foundation
Okay.
of it all, right? The second thing that I ask people and I ask myself is it moving you? Right? Like, and what I mean by that is, do you feel joy out of what you're doing? And
Mm.
people are gonna say joy is that happiness. What is joy? What is happiness? You're saying these fluffy, cute words, John. What does that mean?
Yeah.
And by joy, I mean the state of being. When you're doing what you're doing, when you're doing what you're called to do you feel a euphoric feeling that flows through you because you know you are giving so much value to somebody else
Wow.
that it is doing something to you,
Yeah.
right? Like that's what I mean when I say, does it move you? So those
I
are the
love that.
two questions that you have to start with. Is it truthful and is it moving you?
Yeah. Wow.
And lastly, and one of my favorites when it comes to purpose is, who are you helping? Who are the relationships that you are impacting?
Yeah.
Because relationships and conversation are what I like to call the most purest forms of currency.
Mm.
Like we are relationship people, we are communal people. There is no you without the people. I
Absolutely.
don't have I cannot be a business owner without the help of relationships.
It's
I
required.
cannot, it is required everywhere. Like I can't tell my story without talking about people,
Yeah.
right? So who are you impacting? Who are you serving? What are the relationships around you? So those are the three things that I like to ask myself, and I talk to my clients about these things,
Yeah.
and that's how you begin to define purpose, because purpose looks differently for all of us, but it all serves the same purpose. All the
Mm.
pun intended on that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. 100%.
yes.
I love that. I love that. So, what, like, for the person out there, because this podcast is all about helping people make pivots in their lives and making shifts in their lives.
Hmm.
I really
Yeah.
believe that people who live pivoted lives typically find a much more happy life. They live their purpose because purpose isn't just this one thing that is constant. It changes. It evolves. It's dynamic. So for
Hmm.
for for the listeners out there, and maybe there's people that they really aren't sure if they know their purpose or if they're tapped into their purpose. What do you say to that person? Like, what are some of the first things or first suggestions or early things that people can do to begin to really go deeper? Like, is there some type of like exercises or journal prompts or just questions for people to ask themselves or questions for people to ask other people? Like, how would you like practically, somebody's like, dude, I don't know how to find my purpose. Like, how could you help me do that? Like, what advice would you give to them?
The first advice that I would give to that person is, I would tell you to acknowledge and accept that if you are asking yourself that question, you've already started,
Mm,
right? You know what I'm saying? I think sometimes, man, we think that um we have to take steps and get results. And a lot of time life doesn't work like that. A lot of time life throws things at you have completely no control over. So, and a lot of times we overlook the small steps that lead us to the results. And like you said, man, early on, you said, listen, success is a deliberate decision.
yeah.
And when you begin to ask yourself those questions, that is a decision that you decide to make. So that's the first thing. Like, give yourself the grace and understand that if you're asking yourself these questions, man, you started. You've given yourself the start. The second thing that I would tell people to do is spend time by yourself.
Hmm.
You know, we live in a social media driven society. We live in a digital society. We live in this, like, ongoing attention being taken away, society, which,
Yeah.
there's a lot of value in all of those things that I just named, right? But at the end of the day, in order to serve people, in order to be able to help people, you have to be able to be tapped in with you. So you
Yeah.
got to spend time with yourself. You got to be able to disconnect from that phone. You got
Yeah.
to be able to spend some time in some silence. You got to be able to spend some time in some stillness. You got to be able to have some practices that allow you to pour into you. So like for example, when I start my day in the morning, I always heard that like morning routines are like one of the biggest things to do. So like the last few years, every day when I wake up in the morning, I do not touch I hit my alarm as my alarm goes off. Turn that alarm off. I don't touch my phone. I don't log on no social media. I don't
Yeah.
look at no text. I don't, do any of that. I meditate for about 10 to 12 minutes and then I go work out. So you talking about like the first 90 minutes to 2 hours of my day, I'm pouring into me,
Yeah.
right? So, that's something that you got to be willing to sit with yourself. Um,
Why do you think
the
that's
next
so
thing that
hard to
I
people? Like, cause you say it from a like a developed perspective. Obviously,
mhm.
that's not something that you'll hear from a lot of people. Why do you think sitting with yourself is something that is not? I think it's challenging for a lot of people, but it's also not talked about a lot.
Well, I think one of the biggest reasons of it is just the education of it. We're not really taught this type of stuff.
Yeah.
I know that I wasn't for sure. I wasn't taught this stuff in grade school and high school. And I went to what people consider to be good schools. I went to private school. I went to a pretty very very well high school. In the suburbs outside of Akron. I have my degree. I worked in the field of like social services. This is not stuff that I was taught, and you would think
Mm.
that somebody like myself would have
Especially,
access to this type of stuff.
yeah, especially with the background you were in social
Yeah,
services.
yeah, yeah. Nah, it's not. It was the biggest thing. I wasn't educated on it, and I think the next reason of it is, man, is that you know it's scary, man, and I think a lot of times, especially for men, like we are afraid of the things that we don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
if we're just now hearing it and
Yeah.
we've never practiced it, we don't really know anybody to reference that.
Man.
It's scary, and instead of just admitting that, I'm a little afraid of that. We just shove it
Yeah.
off. So we're not even looking to do anything like that. You know what
Exactly.
I'm saying?
Exactly. So this is powerful, man, because like I'm thinking about men, right? You just segued us
Hmm.
there, right? We talk about men, and I think men, especially what I would consider like the quote unquote manly man, like the guy that you know fixes cars and I don't,
Yeah.
like whatever the stereotypical manly man is. Often men and masculinity is not
Hmm.
necessarily connected with the stuff you're talking about.
Hmm.
Most of the I played football all my life and was very like competitive combat sport. It's gladiator,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
We in the
Right.
locker room, we're not talking about like how long did you sit with yourself this morning, right?
Right.
Or
That's a fact.
like we're not being so introspective, and we're not on that.
Hmm.
Like what
Hmm.
like why do you think men struggle there? And there's probably men out there that's like, bruh, like scratch that. Like I'm not on that. Like that's, you could do that, but that's not me. I don't do that kind of stuff. That's not what men are supposed to do. Like what do you even say to potentially that person that what you're saying might even trigger them in a way where they're like, nah, they just write that off and think, that's not for men. That's this new woo woo stuff. Like how do you talk to that person that might not be so open to even looking at exploring some of the things that you're talking about?
That's so good, man. That's such a great question. And like, a lot of times, man, as dudes, man, sometimes we need to just hear it straightforward, right? So I'll say it like this: for fellas out there, for the men out there, ask yourself, where did you learn what you know today? And
Mm.
also ask yourself, where did you learn what you believe today? Where did you learn that from? Who did you learn it from? And did it work? And when you answer yourself, did it
Did
work?
it
I
work?
want you to then I want you to ask yourself, did it work? Are you sure? Because a lot of
Mm.
this, what we're talking about right now, man, is the impact of socialization, right? A lot of the reasons why a lot of dudes don't, get down with this stuff is because we socialize to think that it's not for us. You
Yeah,
know what I'm saying? We socialize to
100%.
believe that, is not masculine. It
Ah,
doesn't add to any type of money.
yep.
There is no value here.
It's not
You're
helping
not,
me get to the bag. It's not helping
yeah, yeah,
me
yeah.
get the chick that I want. Like,
Yeah, yeah, it
oh
doesn't.
man.
This don't add up to stuff. This don't add up to results. Like I can't see any crystal ball here. Like it's not tangible. I can't feel that. I can't feel purpose. You
Yeah,
feel me?
that's deep.
I can't hold on to. I can't grab. I can't show. I can't take no IG pic of purpose. You feel me? Like I can't show nobody that. That's not tangible.
Yeah.
So those are the biggest things, man. Is that it is it is intentional that men have been socialized to think that the stuff that we're talking about is um X. Like it's not. It's completely anti-masculinity,
Dog. Man, that's
which is completely untrue.
yeah. And I'm thinking about well, like we're not too far. Actually, just yesterday, the whole thing around Twitch, RIP Twitch,
Hmm.
and
Rest in peace.
rest in peace, man. Like it really, man. I like yesterday. I missed a lot of like I seen it, and I'm gonna be honest. Like I seen it, and I was like, oh, like I seen the dude on Ellen, but it didn't really affect me in a way. I just kind of went throughout my day, and
Right.
I finally had some time in the day, like after this was probably about 9 o'clock. I was like, okay, cool. Like most of the stuff that I had to get done today was done, and I was like, yo, I just went scrolling on social media, and my mom actually sent me a video of his wife's TikTok, and
Hmm.
on the TikTok, right, like they're dancing in the TikTok, like they,
Yes.
they dancing, him and his wife and his kids, they're doing their thing, and yo, it hit me in a different way because one, I think I humanized him because I didn't know him personally, right,
Hmm.
and so I think seeing that
Hmm.
made me humanize him and another man and another black man at that. Um,
Yeah.
but the thing that threw me, man, it threw me for a loop was that yo, everything looked good. Like it
He
all
was smiling,
looked,
man.
yeah,
Yeah.
it all looked good, bro. Like the dancing, the they was in a nice house and it was him and his wife and his kids and they was just taking pictures, for Thanksgiving and for Christmas and smiling just 3 days ago. And it
Celebrated their anniversary 4 days ago.
yeah, celebrated anniversary 4 days ago, right? And I'm like, yo, it convicted me. It did a couple things to me. One is I was like, yo, this is that's what threw me because I didn't to me, suicide in my naivety means that it has to be packaged in somebody that looks like outwardly that they're going through depression or they're going through all
Yeah.
these hard things and literally bro, the first thing my mind went to was like, oh, like I wonder, is he going bankrupt, like are they struggling financially, like what my mind is literally going to, why would he want, like what thing happened that will make him want to do that. And
Hmm.
like so my mind was just racing and all over the place. And then my next thought was, yo, who of my friends are like Twitch
Mm.
that I would never know that they
Mm.
really battling with some demons on the inside of them that in a moment's notice, I guess the report came out that he, it was a hotel. He shot himself, at a
Right.
hotel a mile away
Right.
from their
Right.
house, left
Yep.
his
From his
car and
house.
his phone and all that kind of stuff. Like, and so, bro, I just like just shot a couple video messages to some of my good boys, like my friends last night, and just like, yo, I just want to let y'all know, man, like I'm here for you. Like I know everything appears to be okay. Everything we talk about and you tell me seems to be okay. But man, Kirk Franklin said, he was like, yo, you need to get like he said, like you need to know your friends because he's
Hmm.
like, don't ever think that you're overstepping by over communicating, over loving, over connecting, over supporting, over what people call over like engaging your friends because you never know how that's maybe helping somebody through. And so, bro, you are, I think, like to me at least, you like one of the spokesperson of counseling and mental health, and obviously it's wrapped into purpose. Like from your perspective and your experience and all the things that you've done and gone through, and obviously you've talked to some professionals and you have a you see a counselor and you do counseling and all that kind of stuff. Like, what is your take on everything that's going on right now? And what kind of implications do you think it has for other men that are growing up and that are just seeing this kind of stuff happening?
Man, listen, let me stop you for a minute and just say, man, I love these type of conversations, man. This is that divine order again coming through.
100%.
You know what I'm saying? I really I just appreciate having the spaces to be able to do this. Like this is one of those moments. This is one of those moments where we have to like acknowledge like how important this is and how
Yeah,
valuable this is.
100%.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Seeing, being two young black men, with wives and with children having a conversation about just mental health and emotional health and emotional well-being, that is
Absolutely.
powerful in itself. So like I want to just take a minute right now to
Yeah,
acknowledge both
yes,
of us
yes.
and just
I'm glad you did that. Yeah, for
appreciate the
sure.
moment. But man, I I think there's a couple of things that I think is going on. I think that the pandemic highlighted so much. I think that we already knew, and I
Mm,
think that the biggest thing that it highlighted was that a lot of us are a lot of us, especially men, are struggling internally, and we know it, but it takes something very serious and heavy for us to really admit it sometimes.
mm,
And I think that in itself speaks to just how much brothers is really suffering in silence, right? You know what I'm saying? Like the pandemic highlighted this collective grief that we all experienced together. You know what I'm saying? Right? Like, we all were forced to be still for a minute. We all were forced to like take a look at our decisions
yeah.
over the years. And I think that I think that it broke a lot of people during that time period because we didn't have access to those closer relationships. Like, you couldn't go link up with your homies and maybe self medicate to, what I'm saying, get
Yeah.
away from those feelings that you was dealing. You couldn't run to the bar and, what I'm saying, just drink away your pain. You know, feel me? You couldn't
Mm,
just run to the gym or go hoop or go to a party or go to a club or you couldn't push those things away,
right,
right?
right.
You were forced to deal with that stuff in house,
You couldn't even
and
go
I
to
think
church.
that
Like you couldn't even go even to the
couldn't.
positive stuff. Like couldn't even go to
Yes,
church. You couldn't
yes,
even.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. You couldn't go to support groups. You couldn't go to support meetings. Like again, like myself, like I attend counseling regularly. Like even for me, that shifted. I had to start seeing somebody virtually as opposed to seeing them in person. And I look forward to the drive up there where I could process what I was going to be talking about, to
Yeah.
actually sit in the session and to leaving. Like that was a ritual for me that I look forward to do.
Yeah.
Right. So there was a lot of things that shifted from there. And I think that a lot of what we're seeing, with men specifically struggling with like currently going into a new year in 2023, I think a lot of it has to do with the impact of the pandemic specifically,
Mm,
because it was such a collective grief where everybody, um, everybody had like this forced pause and nobody knew what was about to happen. And
yeah.
here we are, just have to go back to normal. So I think that a big deal is orchestrated around that pandemic and the impact of the pandemic for sure. And I think a lot of it, man, I think that the consciousness really is shifting. I think that having conversations like this and, having brothers just having conversations out in the open of, getting
True.
help, getting support, telling people that you're struggling, man. Listen, telling your friends that you love them, bruh. My
Yeah.
birthday was last week. And I made it a note to tell all my homeboys, man, I love you, man. I love you. I
Yeah.
love you. I love you. Now, some of that was a little tequila induced, but still, nonetheless, man, it
Right.
was
Right.
still very much felt, and it was very much true.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that there's it's nuance, it's twofold. I think that some of it has to do with the impact of, yes, the global pandemic that we're experiencing, and I think some of it, man, it's just the timing. It's just God's timing telling us, man, he needs to see the shift change specifically
Mm,
within men, man, because we have to take care of ourselves, man. We have to
yeah.
take care of ourselves, not only for our children and and our partners, but for our communities and um, ultimately, like there is no such thing as generational wealth without generational health.
Yeah.
You feel me? Like there is no
100%.
there there is
Man.
there is no there is none of that.
Yeah.
You can't have wealth if you don't have no health, and you
For
can't have
sure.
health if your mental wealth and your emotional wealth is not on point. You can be swole and strong and run good miles, but
Yeah.
if this up here, if this muscle ain't right, if your spirit not right, it don't matter.
100%. Yo, man, this is like bringing up so much for me, man, because like what you're saying is sparking just so many thoughts that I'm kind of racing and trying to organize right now. One of the things that I'm thinking through is, um, and I talk about this all the time. I believe that the generation that is now have predominantly seen fatherless homes, like especially
Hmm.
black men have
Hmm.
predominantly seen fatherless homes. I like the men that I know that actually had their father in a home. They're actually rare. Like they're people that I'm like, yo, let me pick your brain because there's things that I love to ask you of like what having a nuclear family was like because that mine wasn't that in that traditional way. But I think what it's also doing is because there was a generation where men was just like the gender roles, right? So it's like men, it was like, yo,
Hmm.
men, you just go out, you eat, you go out and kill, you go out and work, you go out and get the paper, you be the breadwinner, and you bring it home to a domestic wife that cooks and that cleans the house and takes care of the kids, and that was like a order. And
Right.
I think what men were asked to do in one season has evolved as well. So I think a previous generation, those men weren't necessarily asked to like put the kids down for bed. They weren't asked to bathe the children. They weren't asked or wasn't even a standard that they be at parent teacher conferences. They were at the football games, they were at the basketball games if they were
Hmm.
in your
Hmm.
life, but they weren't there for like the certain developmental things. They weren't there for the emotional piece. And so, man, I'm thinking through this, and I'm like, yo, like as men, we've had to evolve to be, and I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I think men have had to evolve to be something different than we've historically have seen in the past. And a
Yeah.
lot of this doesn't necessarily have blueprints, guidelines, and standards for what it looks like for you and for your family. And so I'm thinking through, I'm like, man, sometimes I think men, especially men that got families, right? And again, I'm thinking about Twitch and his life. And I'm like, yo, and again, I don't know anything about his background, anything about his story, but somebody who seemed to be so present in his children's lives, it also seemed to be emotionally available. Like they got a YouTube channel and all the things, and I'm just like, yo, he wasn't even a dude that seemed like he just didn't care. Like he's dancing with his kids on social media. Like, come on, like that's it don't get much family oriented than that, right? But
Right.
did
Right.
did we are we asking men to pull back layers of themselves that they're not comfortable with or that they don't have the resources and ability to process through the layers that we're requiring for men to be in 2022 and in 2023?
I think that men are getting tired of performing. Right. I think that the mask of manhood is becoming too much to carry anymore. Again, we're in the internet era. There used to be a time where people could like kind of shield the world from their problems, or kind of like you could turn it off to an extent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those days are gone.
Yeah, you
Those
could shut your
those
door.
those
You
days
just
are
shut your
gone.
front door and the world was cut off.
That's right.
Or
That's right.
unplug your
And
phone from the wall. You weren't connected to nobody at that point.
everybody has access to you all day through this. People can FaceTime you and see what you look like right now. And that can put you
Wow.
at a state of performing, of wearing this mask. And I think men are really becoming tired of having to do that. Um, and I think that I'm just such a big proponent of the greatest emotional tool that we all can carry, especially men, and especially as black men, is empathy. You know, um,
Mm.
when I see you, I don't just see you. I see myself. I see my brothers, my cousins. Like, when I see my son, I see my grandfather, as a child. You feel me? Like I
Mm.
see extended versions of myself, and I empathize with, with brothers like myself who grew up, without their fathers being present. Because, listen, when I learned my father's story, and I learned that his father died when he was two. And when he was in the third grade and for parent teacher conferences, he was the only child in his class that nobody's parents came to. And he's seen his best friend die in front of him when he was 17. When I learned all of that, bro, I look at his story a little bit differently. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? I looked at what he had been through a little bit differently. I began to empathize with his story. So there's a collection of men being tired of performing, and I think that, man, the empathy, I think that it is growing, and we are learning to empathize with one another. But I think that that's still one of the things that we got to be a little bit more intentional about doing, is carrying empathy for one another.
Yeah, like what role do you think that your father? Because I had seen the podcast that you and your father did, and
Hmm.
you've said that that's probably one of the most powerful or impactful or impressionable podcasts that you've ever done, because it allowed you to kind of get out of the sun mode and almost into the interviewer and just look at the person for who they were, and you kind of probably seen their story from a different perspective. But like
Hmm.
how has experiencing your father when you were young and the things that you experienced as a kid changed and evolved, that now that you've become a father and also understand more of his story? Like how has that developed the person that you are today, and it poured into what you consider your like fatherhood and what that means to you?
Man, my father is so important to me. I am his namesake. I am John Morgan Jr. You know what I'm saying? Like I said earlier, it's funny because a lot of times when you hear people speak about their fathers being not present, they have some level of animosity there, for their father. And for me, I think that I I didn't have animosity so much towards my father, is I just, the impact of not having his presence around impacted me,
Yeah.
right? So as we did come together, and he worked through his problems with drugs and things like that, and he began to get sober. We were able to kind of like just build this authentic relationship, because one thing I got to give my dad a lot of credit for is, despite what he went through and despite his trials and tribulations, man, that man, for the most part, he was always honest with me,
Mm,
right? You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Almost to a point
100%.
where he was like way too honest. Like sometimes, like,
You
bro,
could have
all right,
spared me
don't
that.
I don't yeah, I don't even need to know that right now. Like, you know what I'm saying? But it allowed me to humanize the man early on, to
Right.
understand that, like, nah, he's just a regular dude. He's not this superhero guy that I wanted him to be, right? And
Mm.
I'll tell you another thing, man.
Woo. Hold on, dude. You just said something so powerful. You just said something so
Mhm,
powerful, man.
mhm,
And I want to capture it really quick, because I think that, and I'm guilty of this. I think sons look at their father as superheroes,
mhm.
and could that also be a false pedestal and a huge title and role that we're asking mere mortals, unperfect people that've got their own trauma, their own pain, their own experiences to be? And so like I don't even know if like if that's our standard for what a father is, and that's what it's supposed to look like. Can anyone succeed at that role? I think that's such a powerful point there.
Man, I'm gonna give you a real life example. About a month ago, my son, he was it was nap time, and he really hadn't really slept the night before. So 2-year-old, no nap, tired. When it's nap time, the tantrums is flaring up,
Yeah.
and it was one of those moments where, like, his tantrums was going up, and we were getting ready for nap, and he was just not having it. I'm talking about screaming and crying, and at this point, I'm just like, all right, bro, like, this is a lot right now. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm even tired right now. Let's get this nap down.
Right.
But and I was holding him, I was giving him a hug as he was crying. And in that moment, man, I felt so connected to him.
Mm.
I began to get emotional in that moment. And like I felt myself about to start crying. I'm like, nah, I can't cry right now because he crying.
Yeah.
And I felt myself have that thought process in my mind. And I said, wait a minute, John, you cry too.
Mm.
Show the boy that him
Wow.
crying is no different than you crying. And
Wow.
bruh, oh, just baby tears start coming out at that point. And I'm here hugging this little 2-year-old boy. Him and I both are crying. Hey, hey, an hour
Wow.
later, I slept so good, man. I'm like, yo, son, let's cry tomorrow so we can get that nap in again. You know what I'm saying? So it,
Man,
it was it
that's
was it
so
was one of
powerful.
those moments where I almost put the superhero cape on instead of just putting
Mm.
the dad cape on and
And you
just being
had
a
to
regular dude.
yeah, you had to run from that temptation of wanting to put that. Dude, that's so dude, this is so good. This is so good because
Yeah.
literally last night, bro. Like literally last night, my son
Hmm.
came, ran down to hallway. He be finessing, right? Like it's time to go to bed, and I get more hugs
Yeah, yeah,
and more like "Dad, I love yous" but when it's around
yeah.
time for bed, right? So he finessing, he
Yeah,
get
they
out of the
gonna try
bed,
you.
he run across the hall, and man, I don't know what happened, bro, but like he hugged me, right? And it was one of those
Hmm.
big wrap your arms around your son hug, man, and just holding my son, it almost like it flipped for me. Like I don't know if this is making
Hmm.
sense, but it literally flipped for me.
It
I
does.
felt that I was him being held by my father. And
Yes.
and so I'm having emotions like I'm hugging my father when I'm actually hugging my son.
So let me
And
let
I had to almost prevent,
go ahead.
and actually like again for me I was getting emotional. I was like, wow, this was I didn't expect that. It just hit me something crazy.
That's so good, man. So let me go back a little bit. Talking about my father, right? So two more things happened for us where our relationship just changed forever, and we thick as Steve. We super tight to this day. When my mother passed 2 years ago, in the midst of the pandemic on her birthday, extreme grief. I'm talking about the lowest depths of level of
I
grief.
couldn't
I had never
imagine.
felt. I never felt anything like that in my life. Like you can't explain what it feels like to watch your mother transition on her birthday in the midst of a global pandemic. Some craziness, right? At the funeral, I never forget. I went to the bathroom, just trying to get myself together. A lot going on, and I was looking for my dad, and I couldn't see him.
Mm.
And truthfully, man, I started to catastrophize like my thinking. I'm like, oh shit, man, my dad probably not even gonna show up, man. It's gonna be just like when I was a little kid where I wanted him to
Ooh.
show up for something important. He's not gonna show up, bruh. 30 seconds later, he walks in the door. He sees me, bro. He just embraced me. We both broke down and started crying, and I felt like that 5 year old little boy. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
Who needed his pops, and in that moment, I felt him being that child of like
Mm.
his dad was missing, and it was like we had healed so much just from in that moment.
Just that right there.
Um, just in that moment, and then when I had kids, and like, man, my dad tells me all the time now. He like, bro, sometimes I just be thinking about you and your kids when I'm driving. I just start crying,
Yeah.
because it's the evolution and the legacy of like him seeing what he came through from his father, not having a father,
Yeah.
our relationship being what it is, and seeing me grow and pour into my kids, and him having a relationship with my kids. You know, I just have such a deeper level of respect for my father because I don't always just look at him as just being my dad. I look at him as just being a dude, and a lot of times I look at him as being a dude who was once a child who went through some stuff. So,
Yeah.
um, there's a lot of healing that goes into that father wound, man.
Man, bro, it is on both sides, men and women alike. And
Hmm.
I just think it's so powerful because I, these are conversations that a lot of men don't have and that even
Hmm.
less fathers have. And man,
Hmm.
like to me, and I'm curious to know your point here, but like for me, being a father has taught me so much about myself. It's taught me so much about love. It's taught me so much about being compassionate. Like it's pulled so much out of me. And I know you know, our new father, kind of similar to me. Your kid's a little younger. You got a newer born, I should say.
Hmm.
But like,
Yeah,
I wanted to dive in for you. Like, how has being a father evolved or affected purpose for you? Like, what has fatherhood done to purpose for you?
man, it's crystallized it. It's made it so much more clear, and it's a constant confirmation that I know that I'm doing the right thing. I know that me doing the work that I'm doing is right and it's true, and it aligns with, not only with who I am, but who my children are, but who they're going to continue to be. Like it's all crystallized. It became so clear to me that this is what I've always felt it was. You know what I'm
Mm,
saying? Like I always kind of had that underlying knowing, like I said earlier, I always knew I had a gift. And my children have like made that gift even much more true. And they also showed me a side of it that's like, yo, I didn't even know that part of the gift existed. You
right.
know,
100%.
listen, man, there's nothing more triggering than parenting. Um, so I'm always
100%.
triggered by my children. You know, my children trigger me all the time of my internal stuff that I'm battling, and it forces me to ask myself the question, John, what are they triggering you in right now that's making you react this way?
Yeah.
And as much as I, try to run from that, my children are so beautiful that like they see right through me. You know what I'm saying? Even my 9 month year old, she can't even talk, but she get put them eyes on me. She like, Dad,
You could feel it.
like
It's in the spirit. You could
a
feel it.
100%. So they confirm things for me. They made it clear for me,
Yeah.
and they also just give me this they give me this affirmation within me, man, that lets me know that I'm doing the right thing.
I love that, bro. I love that. So, man, you and a couple last questions, and we'll start landing the plane here. Man, you one of your best pieces of content on social media was talking about how your purpose has to be bigger than your ego. And
Yeah.
man, and like, what do you mean by that? Like, what kind of inspired you to talk about that piece, and how do you think the ego um, affects purpose?
That's such a damn good question, man. This is why you good, man. This is why you good in this space, man. This is why you a good coach. You're a good orator. Um, but truthfully, man, everything for me comes from a place of being authentic, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like in that moment, I was putting my value system of materialism over my purpose. And what I mean by that is that like, and on a small scale, I was looking for guests who had like, big time followings and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? And I was looking at opportunities to do stuff that I knew it could, bring in the money, but it wasn't, I had to check myself like, wait a minute, that ain't what you about. You know what I'm saying? That's not what you doing this for. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? And who are you doing this for?
yeah,
Are you doing this to like prop up this presentation of yourself for who?
right.
So in that moment, I had to check myself like, wait a minute, the name is live your purpose, be you. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
I had to check myself. So a lot of times, man, the content, that I build, it's always in the vein of serving people, but
yeah.
it's always from a place of authenticity. So in that moment, man, I was having my own moment with it. And I
Mm,
think that sometimes putting ego over purpose is it could be a couple things. It could be self-serving. So it's only, doing things for you and it's self-serving in a small time frame. So it's not going to really bring a lot of substance there.
yeah,
I also think that ego is doing things from um, from principles that don't work. Like I said earlier, man, a lot of times in socialization, man, we've been given these ideas about ourselves and what we think we're supposed to do. And when you living by false principles, then a lot of times that is ego driven. So you got to check why you're doing things.
yeah,
What's the why behind what you're doing? And I think the last thing about ego over purpose is that like there's nothing wrong with taking things slow.
mm,
And and ego wants you to get stuff done quickly. Ego wants you to like skip steps.
yeah,
Ego wants you to, um, be in control. And purpose don't give a damn about control. Matter of fact, purpose is going to like make you
mm,
sit down and wait for something, um, just because. Or purpose is going to keep bringing up that same challenge. Purpose is going to make you face your wife and have that tough conversation with your wife that she's been telling you about for the longest and you've been putting it off for the longest.
yeah.
You know what I'm
So
saying?
you
Like
gotta face it.
that's what you gotta face it, man. So
Wow,
um
I love this.
yeah, man,
That's good.
you gotta choose your purpose over your ego, man. You have to.
That's good. That's good. All right, man. I'm gonna lighten it up a little bit, and
Okay,
I'm gonna lighten it up. I'm gonna ask you a couple questions so people get to know John Morgan here. For
let's
anybody
do
that
it. Let's
doesn't
do
know
it.
John, and then, man, I want you to kind of be preparing in the back of your mind. At the end, I want you to leave the last message, your last message to the world. Like what? Like if
Okay.
everything, I forget. I think Lewis Howes does it, right? If everything that you ever posted, ever said, ever tweeted, ever talked to people about was all erased, what would be the thing that you would want to leave for the people? So I'm gonna ask
Wow,
you a
that's the
couple.
last question. That's the
That'll be
last
your last
question.
question. Yeah, that'll be your last question.
Okay. All right.
So
Okay.
so I didn't want to just throw it on you. I wanted to let it marinate a
I
little
got you.
bit
Got you. Got you.
while I'm asking you
That's big.
some
I'm with
situational questions. Situational questions.
you. Okay. Cool.
All right, man. So
Great.
so for you, what's your favorite food? Like what meal? What's your favorite meal?
Man, I have a distinguished bougie palate, man. You know,
I be
I
seeing
like
it.
premium sushi, man. I like premium sushi, man. You know what I'm saying? I like not just none of that stuff you get at Giant Eagle. You feel
All
me?
right.
I got, I gotta go to the real spot, man, to get the real thing, man. You know what I'm
Squeeze the
saying?
lime on
I
top
like
of it.
premium sushi, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for sure, man. You know what I'm saying? Premium oysters and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? I done involved a little bit in the
Yeah.
food game, man. So premium sushi is my go to for sure,
I love that.
100%.
I love that. I love that. What is one of the best things, or what is the best thing you've ever bought for under $100?
Oh my goodness, I love this question because I got some stuff that I done bought for woo. The best thing that I ever bought for under $100.
Yeah, and it could be the most useful, the thing that you're like, yo, I can't go a day without this thing. Like, what is the most valuable thing I would say you got under $100 that you've bought for under 100?
Wow, my iron. I iron clothes every day, and I love ironing
You iron clothes every day.
every day.
Are you serious?
If it's brand, if it's brand new and it's folded up in the store, I'm still gonna iron it
Are you serious? Dang, that's old
every
school,
day.
yo. That's
Hey, my dad was in the military, man. So he gave me that jewel real early, man.
jeez.
Iron your clothes, son.
Yeah, I used to do it as a kid, man, but dang, I love that. I love that.
Every
Okay.
day, every day.
Um, so basketball player, you going with LeBron or
hmm
Jordan? The GOAT. Which one is the GOAT for you?
I'm going with Brian.
Brian. Okay. Uh, if you are on a deserted island, and
hmm
you can only bring three people with you, and I'll let you consider family as one person. You don't have to name the
Okay.
people. You don't have to name the people, but I want to know, who would you bring with you, and why would you bring that person?
All right. So question. So caveat. Can these people? They can be anybody. Like I don't have to have a relationship with them today
No,
or at all.
anybody.
I just bring them.
Yep.
All right. So I'm gonna yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna definitely bring my family. I'm gonna bring my wife and children with me for sure.
Okay.
Um, I would bring. I would bring. Oh, that's another great question. I would bring back Nipsey Hussle just because I
Mm,
think that I would really want to have some like some dope building conversation to figure out how we gonna make this joint the best. Like we gotta
that'd be
we gotta
dope.
figure a way to build on this joint, man.
Hundred
I think
percent.
that we can do that.
100%.
Um, and the last person I'll bring Mike Tyson because he gonna
Wow.
be able to fight. He gonna be able to fight. He gonna have some wisdom
Y'all gonna have some
and
really good
like
conversations.
yes, and Mike gonna have a good time out there, man.
Oh
So
yeah,
that's what I would bring for sure.
for sure, for sure. All right, here is my last one. Um,
hmm
if all things were lost, and you only had one possession that you could save, you lost all your possessions. You can only save one possession. What would that possession be?
Ask me the question one more time.
If you lost all of your possessions, lost all of your stuff, all of your things, except for one, what would be the one that you would keep, that you wish you had saved?
I hate that I'm gonna say this, but it's the truth. It was got to be my phone. You know what I'm
Wow.
saying? I
Okay.
just do so much with my phone. You know what I'm saying? Like it would have to be the phone.
Gotcha.
I hate to say that, but it's truth.
It's got to be
It's
the
my
phone.
phone for sure.
Hey, I'm with you. I'm
Got to
with you.
be.
All right, man. Well, listen, y'all. That is John Morgan. Man, thank you for like this conversation. I could probably do this for another hour, hour and a half, more hours, bro. But man, I want to leave you with the last final point. So, the last question for you, and you're gonna have center stage here. And the question is, if everything you've ever said, everything you've ever told people, every post you've ever posted, everything you've posted on YouTube, every podcast is gone, and you only have one message that will remain on this earth after you pass away. Your kids will be able to see it, your kids, the world will be able to hear it. Only this one message from John Morgan. What would that message be?
Find your purpose, or you wasting air.
Mm, I love that. Mic drop.
Period.
Mic drop. There it is. Well,
That's
listen,
it.
man, I just want to thank you for checking out this episode, man. Thank you, John. Man, appreciate you for coming on. We remember
Thank you.
here that life is all about the pivots, and those who decide to make the pivots decide to become successful. Peace.
Peace.